In this video, I take you through the process I went through in installing electricity in my dream home in Lusaka, Zambia. Welcome to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Bridget Wint, and if you're coming back, then welcome back. This part of my building project was probably the trickiest one. The reason being I wasn't around to supervise the work, and also just about everything that was happening was completely out of my control. Installing electricity in Zambia used to be one of the most difficult things you would ever go through, at least in the previous years. So we applied for installation of electricity from Zesco, which is the national electricity company. And for years and years we waited. We checked in with the office that was taking care of our account. We had paid up everything. We checked in often, but nothing was happening. Obviously, the company was going through whatever it was going through. I cannot explain this. Nonetheless, about a year ago, we finally managed to get our installation after visiting this office one more time. So finally, when Zesco came and installed electricity, or at least dropped it into our property, we were ready to hire somebody to install electricity throughout our home. And as I mentioned, I wasn't around, but my brother and my cousin. Now, if you've been following me for a while, you will notice that sometimes I'll say my two brothers. In my Zambian culture, a cousin who is born to your aunt is considered a brother. So when you hear me referring to my two brothers, that's who I'm talking about. My younger brother and my cousin. My two brothers. So my two brothers were around to help supervise the work. Their presence meant everything. As with all the other parts of the project, we got several quotations from electricians, and then we decided on this one guy. The electrical plan had been clearly laid out by my husband, but to translate that from paper to the actual installation proved to be a very, very difficult process. In the end, some of the work was okay, but some of it had to be redone because it was outrightly dangerous. So I am going to share with you a few tips that will make your installation faster and safer, probably even cheaper. Big disclaimer here, I'm not an electrician. Make sure you consult with a professional electrician before installing your electricity. What I'm doing is sharing my journey and giving you tips that may be helpful. So that is the perspective and context through which I'm sharing these tips with you. So with that perspective, tip number one, include an electrical layout in your building plan. This will help you to plan in advance, even as you do your floor plan and your whole building plan. In other words, map out everything in advance. Think through in advance where you want electrical items like fridges, microwaves, TVs, outlets, security systems, pumps, your cooker or stove, your geyser, and so on. Tip number three, simpler is definitely cheaper. What we did in our home was that we laid out the plan in such a way that some of the electrical lines were back to back in adjacent rooms. In other words, we would chisel one side, and that one side would provide wiring for, let's say, bedroom number 1 and bedroom number 2. So the electrical appliances would be lined up. That way you're not chiseling your wall in too many places. Tip number 4, only use the correct size of wiring. You must use heavier wire for items that use more electricity, e.g. your cooker, your fridge, your air conditioning. Tip number 5, use correct breakers. Never use oversized breakers to avoid tripping often. Tip number 6, all connections should look neat. Sockets and switches should not be loose. There should be no exposed bare copper wire. The electrician should always test all his or her work with a multimeter. Don't plug in your expensive TV, laptop, or phone until everything tests okay, because something might be out of order. So always test everything before using or plugging in any expensive appliances. Tip number 7. All wiring should run through plastic tubing. Nothing should be left exposed at all. I'm saying this because there are electricians out there who will say, oh no, this is okay as long as it's passing through cement. No, all your electric wiring should always pass through plastic tubing. Tip number 8, avoid having electric sockets near water. That is near sinks, showers, bathtubs, and taps. Make sure any sockets in these areas are strategically placed and you use the correct type of sockets. For example, in the bathroom and near your sink, there's a special type of socket that you can use. Just don't put anything near there. That is not appropriate. So far, if you're finding this video helpful, please remember to like this video and subscribe if you haven't already. Share this video with anybody else who might find it of value. Tip number 9. Label the breaker box so you know where the right switches are. We struggled with this one because the electrician who did the work for us just put everything in there. There were no labels. If there were any, there were very few. So we had to redo everything. Make sure your electrician labels everything in the breaker box so you can know where everything goes in case you need to shut off something. Tip number 10. Lines joined together should be, first of all, in a junction box. Secondly, they should never be buried in a wall. Thirdly, secured with wire nuts and electrical tape. That is for any lines that you join together. This is a safety measure and it is the correct way to install joined lines. Tip number 11, your electrical system should be grounded. What does that mean? An earth wire going from the breaker box onto a copper rod driven into the soil. That's how you ground. Most electricians will already know this, but just make sure it is done correctly. Tip number 12, the breaker box should be in a dry location. A dry place ensures that your breaker box is not easily flooded, which is an electrical hazard for sure. Most people will lock their breaker boxes as well. Apparently, people do steal these breaker boxes and everything that you put in it. So keep it locked. I believe there's a requirement by Zesco as to where you can put your outside breaker box, but you would have to look into those details yourself. Tip number 13. Use quality material all the way through. Stay away from lightweight plastic, cheap sockets and switches. Like everything else, cheap is always expensive in the long run. The biggest tip I can give you as far as installation of electricity in Zambia goes is find an electrician, a professional electrician who knows what they are doing, inspect their work, talk to previous customers. That will give you your best bet as far as hiring an electrician. Better yet, if you hire somebody who has worked with somebody you trust already, then that is even a plus. Another thing, electricity interruptions are major in many of the African countries that I know. Zambia is no exception. So as an alternative, solar electricity is a viable option. When my family and I lived in Kasempa, we wired our house for solar electricity so that whenever Zesco decided to shut off the electricity, we at least had some lights in our home. More and more people are taking their homes off grid and installing solar electricity completely. That is an option that I'm going to look into for my house as an alternative to Zesco. I hope this video has been helpful. Please remember to give it a like, subscribe if you haven't already, and share this video to as many people as you can. When you like and share and comment on this video, it lets YouTube know that the information I'm providing you is of value. This is extremely helpful to my growing channel. I appreciate your support, and for now, I'm gonna wish you goodbye and see you later. Bye-bye.